Welcome back to another episode of Travis Can I Have This? Today, I am wearing my cowboy hat, my Australian Outback cowboy hat, because we are going to get down under and dirty on a topic that I am very passionate about. I'm ready to get on this horse and make sure you all come with me to better understand merchant processing fees. Now, in full disclosure, I am not a merchant processor or merchant processor expert in any way, but over the course of the years, I have come across clients who have these really large merchant processing fees. And as an accountant, we're looking at all their costs and their overhead. And if something looks kind of crazy, we dig into it. And I am just kind of bugged at the industry of merchant processing. Now, I love giving people the benefit of the doubt. There are plenty of great merchant processors out there. This is not a dig at, hardworking individuals, but it feels like there are a lot of shenanigans that go on when it comes to merchant processing. And what we're talking about with merchant processing is when a patient is at your practice ready to pay for their services. They are so happy. You did such a good job cleaning their teeth, filling the holes in their mouth and their teeth, and they hand you that beautiful black Amex card. And you swipe it, and you have to pay a hefty fee for those swipes. And today we are going to go through 13 things that every dental practice owner should know about merchant processing. And I'm ready for the ride. I hope you are too. Let's get into it. 13 things. The first thing that you need to know about merchant processing is there are two primary philosophies that you could have at your practice when it comes to merchant processing. And this is the first thing you need to understand because a lot of the other things you may ignore depending on what your philosophy is with merchant processing. The two primary philosophies is your merchant processing convenience focused or cost focused? Here's what I mean. When I say convenience focused, there are some merchant processing services that are very convenient and they go into your operations very seamlessly and they cause little disruption. They allow for you getting your patients revenue as quickly as possible. It's easy for your team. It's just very convenient. Usually has a nice tech interface to some degree. The most common example here is a merchant processor that is a preferred provider in Dentrix, and they integrate with Dentrix and it syncs with Dentrix or whatever practice management software you use. It integrates with that. Usually, those practice management softwares don't let too many merchant processors integrate with their system. They usually have someone that's preferred. And if you're using one of those people, that can be very convenient. And that is your primary focus is operational convenience. There is another strategy, which is I just want the least expensive processor. I just care about cost. If it means I have to do a certain system outside of my practice management system software, I will. I just want to save as much money as possible. And depending on what philosophy you have, that will change a lot of the other things that we'll talk about. And just in full disclosure, I think both of them are good strategies. And depending where you're at on your practice, how big your practice is, how many other headaches you have, there are very good reasons for adopting both of those. Right now, in my accounting business, I have a convenience focused merchant processor. And I hate that I know I'm paying a lot of money for my merchant processing and it bugs me. But right now, there are so many other things that I need to worry about. And operationally, it solves a lot of problems for me that is good for me right now. Long term, I plan to change my merchant processors. But for now, I'm okay with it. And I know what my strategy is. Second thing that you need to know about merchant processing is that actually numbers 2, 3, and 4, we're going to talk about the different pricing structures. Number 2 is Interchange-plus, that's a pricing structure, Interchange-plus, is going to be the most transparent pricing structure. Let's talk about what Interchange-plus is. Many of you may understand this, but it's something that always feels a little bit confusing. And I always have to relearn this myself about interchange fees. When we say interchange fees, anytime a credit card is swiped, it's usually associated with a credit card company like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and usually a bank, Chase, Bank of America, different banks. When you swipe, there is a fee that goes to Visa and whatever bank, let's say Chase Bank, every time that card is swiped. And that is a pretty hefty fee. This fee is separate from who's ever helping you process those credit cards. So a very popular processor is like Square or even QuickBooks or Stripe. Or if you go to a restaurant, you'll see Toast. Those are very popular processors. This interchange fee is separate from their fee. And it's a pretty significant fee. I think a good average is around 1.8%. Think almost 2% of every credit card that swipe is going to an interchange fee. Now, the interchange fee will change depending on the type of card it is, and we'll talk more about that in another item. But this interchange fee is a big fee, and there are merchant processors that take whatever the interchange fee is, and it does change depending on the card, and they'll add their own markup. So let's just say, like, I think a very good goal for most practice owners to have if you're going to do an interchange plus fee structure is you have the interchange fee, which the processor, it's basically a non-negotiable fee. There's no getting a discount on the interchange fee. Like, you're not going to go call up Visa and ask them for a lower fee. So it's the interchange fee plus a third of a percent would be a good goal, but it could be anywhere between a third of a percent to 2/3 of a percent of a markup on the interchange plus a amount of cents per transaction. So usually it's like 5 cents or 10 cents or 20 cents for each transaction that goes. So you have this interchange fee plus a percentage markup and then a per cents per transaction markup. Now, every merchant processor may have a different structure on the interchange plus, but that's a pretty good standard to follow. And if you could find someone that has a 30% markup with a 10-cent transaction fee, you're probably going to get a pretty good rate there. So just to give you an example, if somebody came in your practice and you had that structure and it was $1,000 fee, $1,000 that you're trying to collect, your merchant fee with an interchange plus would probably be about $22 on that. Again, it depends on the card and the interchange rate on that. But just know if you do the interchange plus pricing structure, you will get the most transparency. And for most dental practices, it's probably the least expensive option to go. Now, one thing I have seen, just a little disclosure, I have seen some merchant processors that pad the interchange fee. So they say, oh yeah, we'll do interchange plus pricing structure. But let's say the interchange fee is 1.5%. They add, a quarter of a percent to that, conveniently enough for them. You definitely want to make sure none of that is happening. And it's a truly interchange plus whatever the processing fee is for that. Number 3, there is a thing called tier pricing, and it is a big trap. I don't mean to be a negative Nelly on this, but I've yet to see tier pricing with a lot of transparency and really it work into people's best interests. Usually what a tier pricing means is it's like an interchange fee plus a markup, but the markup will change based on the interchange fee. So if it's a really high interchange fee, it'll have a higher processing fee. And a lot of times you don't really know what you're going to pay ahead of time. You have to look at your statements to see what the tiers are, but they'll lure you in with the lowest tier being really low, but then the higher tiers are really high. And then that's where most of your transactions are. So without going too deep into tiered pricing, just know that tiered pricing is usually a trap and you should avoid it. The fourth thing you should know is that flat pricing is very simple, but usually more expensive. So flat pricing is what Square does, or Stripe, or PayPal even. They have this single flat rate that you pay. And it's very nice and easy to understand. Well, there's when they say, hey, it's 3%, a flat fee every time you swipe, it's going to be 3%. But you know that they are not dumb. It's very large. These are very large companies, and they probably have a good idea what your average interchange rate is. And they're making sure that there's a good markup in that when they give you the flat rate. But usually the flat rate comes with some convenience and some ease and a good technology platform, which can be nice. But just know if you get a flat rate from someone, you're probably overpaying. Number 5, higher reward credit cards have higher interchange fees. And this is something that's important to know if you think about your patient makeup. And if all your patients have an Amex Black Card, that probably means there's a very high interchange rate. And maybe you do want flat rate pricing and make Square eat all that interchange rate. But for most practices, usually most dental practices have a decent mix of demographic of patients. But it's something that you should be aware of, is that if a lot of your patients have really rich rewarded credit cards, you're going to have a higher interchange rate on those. So when you look at your past merchant fees and statements, you should be able to see that and find out how many of the credit cards that are coming through your practice really have those high rates. Number 6, interchange rates also depend on how the card is processed. I think a lot of people understand this, but it is important to know. For example, if it's a physical credit card presented and it's a chip or tapped, that has a lower interchange rate than if it was a credit card that someone's reading to you over the phone and you're manually entering it. You'll pay a higher interchange rate for the manual entries because there's a potential for fraud. And so the credit card companies are charging a higher rate on that. Now, there are different nuances to this that you should work with your merchant processing company to make sure that you minimize these additional fees as much as possible so that you know when they charge a higher interchange rate. For example, if you enter the zip code on a manual entry, sometimes that helps lower the rate. Or if it's an online payment and you make them put the full address, those are things that can help reduce the rate, and how you take the card can change the rate. And again, a lot of merchant processing companies will cover this with you, but just make sure you're aware of that and that your office is doing those things, which usually don't require that much work, but doing those things to get the lowest possible merchant processing rate. Number 7, hidden fees are all over the place. And maybe they're not hidden, but let's just call them made up fees. Anytime I look at a merchant statement for one of my clients, it's always humorous to me, all of the random fees that will come up. There's a batch processing fee, there's an FCI compliance fee, there's a minimum processing fee, a monthly fee, I feel like charging another fee. Just the most random fees, it seem like, come up in the merchant processing world. And just like my hat, it's the wild, wild west, and they can make up whatever they want. So I would just be aware of fees. And there's probably going to be some fees, but just know what they are ahead of time. And hopefully they help your overall rate still be reasonable. Meaning, if I got a really good interchange plus rate from someone and it was a fantastic rate, but they had this annoying monthly fee, well, I'd put up with that annoying monthly fee because my overall rate is still really low and it's all good in the hood. So other fees to be aware of is there are cancellation fees. So I would always be weary of a merchant processor that makes you sign a long-term contract or makes you sign a contract with cancellation fees. There are enough merchant processors out there that you should not have to find one that requires you to do that. Number 8 If you have not looked at your merchant processing fee in several years, I can assure you, you are paying more than what you signed up for, and that you are probably paying too much. It is extremely common for these merchant processors to raise their rates ever so slightly over the years. And they do it like, that analogy of boiling a frog or whatever it is, right? They do it just slowly over time, turning up the heat. You don't really notice it right away. And after a few years go by, your rate's pretty high. I mean, there are practices that go 10 years without looking at their merchant rates, and they are just getting raped at that point. It is something that you have to be looking at. And this is one thing that kind of bugs me about it. Like, why can't you just give me a good flat rate forever? The industry, though, it's kind of normal to raise rates over time. So you need to add it to your annual checklist. Just let me spend 1 month and look at my merchant fees and do a quick analysis. That's why in our accounting firm, the month of February is the month that we look at merchant fees. And we just look at it from a very high level. We look at your total credit cards collected, swiped, and your total merchant processing fees. And without getting too detailed into it, we can have a pretty high level flag on if something fishy is going on with your merchant processing. Number 9, integrated payment systems will lock you in. And this is going back to if you use a merchant processor that is integrated with Dentrix. You're going to pay more. You're also going to be locked in. It's going to be harder to change. Again, all of these things could be okay. But one thing I would keep in mind is if your practice management software or whatever it is that you're locked into this processor because of your software that you're using. If there's other merchant processors that are with that software, make sure you shop it around and try to make them compete with each other. In my experience in the accounting world, I've noticed that accounting softwares will often have 2 approved merchant processors so that you're not just stuck with one. Because I think they know that people may have a bad experience with someone and they need another option without totally leaving that software. So make sure if there's other options that you find out who those options are and you work with those. Otherwise, you're kind of trapped. Number 10. Number 10 just really just feels conspiracy theory to me. But number 10 is don't get cozy with those insurance companies sending you virtual credit cards. I remember when I started seeing this in my brother's dental practice, just like, why? Why are you sending me this virtual credit card? Just send me a check or, send me EFT for these payments. But what is happening? I mean, if you go back to Visa charges 1.5% at minimum on a credit card swipe. Imagine an insurance company like Delta Dental, and let's just pretend they pay out $1 billion in insurance claims over the course of the year. If Visa can now get their hands on $1 billion of swiped transactions, you better believe they're going to share a little bit of that with Delta Dental to incentivize them to send that out to everyone. And just really bugs me because it's ultimately just a greedy way. And it's whose pocket is it coming out of? It's coming out of the dental practice owner's pocket. So if you have an insurance company who is sending you a virtual credit card, make sure that you don't get lazy about it. I think there's a couple options that you can do. One is go to the insurance company and ask them to send you an ACH or EFT for those payments instead of a virtual credit card. My understanding is that most insurance companies should listen to this request. If they don't, I believe there's class actions coming down the road for these insurance companies because they really shouldn't be doing this or shouldn't be forcing you as a dental practice owner to do it. Now, if for whatever reason you can't seem to get through to the insurance company or they're not going to do ACH for you for these payments and you're stuck with a virtual credit card, make sure this is a topic that you discuss with your merchant provider. And you tell them, hey, these insurance companies send me a virtual card. This is how I enter it. What is the lowest possible rate I can get on these transactions. It's usually a pretty significant amount that you're getting from these insurance companies, and you want to make sure you're working specifically with your merchant processor on those transactions. Number 11. This is what we're doing with all of our clients right now. If you're paying over 3%, you're probably overpaying. So, with our practice right now, we're looking at all of our clients and we're doing a quick calculation on total collections from credit cards and total merchant fees. If it's over 3%, we're looking at your merchant processing statements. Hey, let's look at your statements. Let's see if you can get a better rate, how your fee's structured, those kinds of things. So, if you don't want to hassle with this more than you have to, just know if you're at over 3%, there's probably some room to give. Now, number 12 is statements are very hard to read on purpose. And this is also a very annoying thing about the industry. Now, interchange rates are complicated depending on the card and those kinds of things. So I will give processors some grace in that Visa and MasterCard have made things pretty tricky and complicated on how the rates are calculated. And the statements are super confusing. But I think everyone that operates in the merchant processing world, I don't think they hate that things are so confusing and that when the average Joe looks at the statement, they have no idea what they're looking at. So just be prepared. If you're going to look at a merchant processing statement, it's going to be confusing. You're going to probably want someone to help you as you're doing that. And you can go back to them as well and ask for clarification questions from your merchant provider, and they should be able to break things down for you simply. If they can't, after asking them to, then that's obviously another red flag. The 13th thing that I wanted to bring up is everyone can beat your current price. And here's what I mean. It is unbelievable how many times I have taken a merchant statement to a competing merchant processor for one of my clients to say, hey, this is what they're currently getting. And it always seems like whoever we give that to, they can always beat the price. Everyone is willing to lower their fees to win your business. And just knowing that helps empower you to know that you can probably get a lower quote from somebody else and then use that quote for your current provider to say, hey, these people are going to give me a lower rate. Can you price match that? And that is a great way to get a lower rate without causing a disruption of having to transfer. But one thing to keep in mind, going back to item number 8, is prices will go up over time. So you want to try to find someone, and you can even bring this up in your conversation as you're looking around at, hey, when prices increase, how will I know? Will you notify me? Will you commit to not increasing rates? I don't know if you can get a price lock or a price guarantee. I don't really know if I've seen that before. Doesn't mean you can't ask for it. But just be aware that even if your current company is going to price match, if they've been raising rates on you like crazy the last 4 years, do you really want to stay with them knowing that they're probably going to do that again? All right, those are my 13 things to be aware of when you think about merchant processing for your dental practice. Again, look at your rate. If it's over 3%, I would definitely pull your most recent merchant statement and try to find a competitive rate on that. And going to an Interchange-plus pricing structure is probably going to be your best bet if you can. And always be aware of those hidden fees and try your best not to put up with the shenanigans that we see in the merchant processing world. Thanks, everyone.